Joshua Maponga, without wasting time, let us get on to the matter that we are here for. Bishop Maponga, you spent years in South Africa. You preached in South Africa. You changed lives and turned many to God. And that was, of course, in South Africa. And now you are in Zimbabwe. Do you have a message to the people of South Africa and to the people of Zimbabwe, the people of Africa and the people of the world with regard to your journey as a religious leader? Please, you can respond to that. Go ahead, Bishop.
Thank you very much. I have had a very bumpy life. I joined the ministry at the age of 15 from an Adventist background. And so it saw me fast-tracking myself through universities and traveling around the world at a very early age. And to be more specific, when I was in South Africa, my journey there was very transformative. I got there 91, 92. After my graduation, I was pastoring Masvingo and doing halfway between Johannesburg and Zimbabwe. And so I saw the last pieces of the battle in South Africa, including the memorial service of Chris Hani, which I conducted in Venda University, and got myself involved in the political space with gentlemen such as Alex Nemakonde, and that Malema then was still a young man. And I grew up there. I did not spend much time there. I did about 2-3 years, then did Swaziland, then moved to Europe. Then when I came back, finally, I could realize a country that was struggling with racial discrimination, and the power of transformative dialogue, where people were able to start talking their differences, coming from various diverse places, and people that were injured by apartheid, beginning to talk and work through their own issues. I saw almost what I could call a first world in Africa, very developed, and I started to have a feeling that if some of these beautiful things I see in South Africa could actually begin happening at home also. So it was a learning curve for me. It shaped my thinking in many aspects. And most importantly, it gave me an opportunity to experience Africa in her totality in terms of the networks that I was beginning to develop when I was there. And the plethora of dialogues in multicultural and multifaceted academic space, political, cultural, is far much more receptive as contrasted to Zimbabwe and other parts of Africa. So it was a classroom for me. And those are some of the things that I wished that when we come back home, we should actually be able to start instituting, reviving our indigenous knowledge systems and finding our footing as a genuine African people.
Right. Thank you very much, Bishop Joshua Maponga. There were, I mean, some pictures that we saw and videos, in your religious journey, where at some point, apparently you were living in the curves, and people were wondering if if you have lost your marbles or something like that. Do you want to just quickly touch on that?
It's amazing that when you go to the caves, people think you have lost your marbles. But when people are putting on jackets and ties and they're walking up to church and drinking blood and eating flesh, no one has ever challenged them for losing their marbles. It just goes to show the level of colonization that we have gone through. That as an African child, when you just want to retrace your steps to your origins, you are supposed to be labeled as crazy person. But when you are naming your children Ronaldo, watching TV, eating recycled garbage foods, you never consider that actually part of colonization has to do with mind capture. But yes, I decided to take my journey away from the Christian and civilization, and I trekked back my feet into the cultural and indigenous forests, not for fun, not for tourism, but I was learning to discover that the caves were used for various purposes in the past, not only for preserving food, not only as places of rites of passage, they also were being used for burial sites of kings. There were mining shafts, there were water wells, and there was also a library of information, the writings of of the ancient people are all there. The information that the classroom could have skipped while teaching me, I decided to go and experience it. If that is losing our minds, then it goes to say that a man who spends 25 years in university studying only to finish and say he does not have experience, I think even our educational institutions are also quite losing of mind on steroids, that we spend so much time learning a lot about nothing, only to come back and find that we are non-experienced in what we are doing. So yes, I did that. I did South Africa, I did Drakensberg, I did Mpumalanga, I did Zimbabwe, Eastern Highlands, Tomboshava, Matsivadona, many other places, Matopos, and the whole I did, something was calling me there, and I felt I needed to reconnect, take off my shoes, and experience our old people and harvest the technology of the past. And if possible, bring it to the present. And that's where you hear me say, I'm a watcher from the future, living with you in the present, with solutions from the past. I felt that in our high speed of going towards globalization, we're losing some of the technologies that our forefathers had left for us. And I felt very much compelled, to an extent that even my religion and my soft life, some of you may know where I live in South Africa and where I live here, my soft life became non-important. Not that I'm poor, by no means, no. But I just felt all that was dung, and I needed something much more meaningful. My soul was yearning for more value than just the cosmetics that were hanging around me and artificial lives of people who claim to be educated, but they know very little about themselves. I thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Bishop Maponga. Of course, we have got many hard-hitting things that we are going to be touching base on shortly. But okay, on that point, let me just also speak about the number of Zimbabweans who have left their country to go to South Africa to look for opportunities, since the challenges that we faced from the 2008 hyperinflation in Zimbabwe. We saw quite a number of our own people from Zimbabwe going to South Africa, having had experience in South Africa yourself, and having followed some of the xenophobic statements coming out of South Africa and other people, including the Minister of Sports in South Africa, who actually got hired on the basis of, highlighting this issue of Zimbabweans migrating to South Africa and xenophobic statements with some other groupings coming up in South Africa. And apparently there's an election taking place in South Africa this year, and there's some expectation that some of these groupings are going to garner votes and go to parliament. Do you have a message to South Africans with regard to the state of migrants, or let me say immigration issues in South Africa, and also in terms of any messages to Zimbabweans who are in South Africa in terms of opportunities they may probably get in Zimbabwe, their own country?
It must be mentioned right on top that the history of Zimbabwe and South Africa is a complex one. We may need to look at it through various windows. We may want to look at the economics of South Africa and Zimbabwe in the backdrop of the colonizers, Cecil John Rhodes and Jameson and many other colonial masters who would take workers from Zambia and Malawi to build up Harare and take the resources of Harare to build up Johannesburg. There's no country in the south here that can claim, even Harare, we cannot claim that we built this city. It was built by Zambians, it was built by Malawians who were working in our mines, but the migration went further south because that's where the development was happening, in the mines that are down there. We share a lot in common at an economic level. Politics tends to divide us. Spirituality unites us. And while I'm there, culture can actually become a conduit of connecting with each other. I'm so excited. As of last week, I saw Mtwaka as a king visiting up with the king of KwaZulu, Natal. And I was quite excited to see that happening because I had spoken to the father a few years ago, King Zwelithini, and he had shared some sentiments of his desire to meet some of his children who had crossed over into this space, whether that is true or not, that they are his children because of the Mzilika's Shaka debate. We'll leave that for the scholars. Argue how many angels can dance at the sharpest point of a needle. But they shared quite a common history, and that reunion for me begins to speak to the unification that culture can bring amongst us if we can just look beyond our shoulders. The Ndebeles, the language, the Sutus, the Tswanas, the Tsongas, the Vendas, the Karangas, even to be called a Kwere Kwere, it's actually shows that some of our brothers across the Limpopo are not yet educated enough, because there's nothing called Kwere Kwere. There's actually a tribe here in Zimbabwe called Kore. But then everything that is outside of the country is called Kore Kore. And if we are Kwere Kweres in South Africa, then what should we say about our brothers and sisters, our mothers, our uncles who are in Kwablawayo? Can we also call them Kwere Kweres? Then that becomes a derogative statement, because then you're dealing with settlements of Africans beyond the borders of political differences. So, and I think that for South Africa and Zimbabwe, imagine the amount of exports and imports that Zimbabwe and South Africa, business-wise, we can begin to enjoy should the borders be opened. Botswana, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Namibia, and Zambia, Mozambique, Malawi, all of us creating a very active economy. My advice to South Africans is that you have the technology. In some cases, you have the money. You have also the education because of the big universities, Wits University, Johannesburg University, Cape Town University, where South Africa was in the 1800s. Zimbabwe is right there right now. Most of our mines are still on open cast, development galore. I managed to work in the De Beers when I was in South Africa. I went down the mining shaft, some of them 5 kilometers, some of them 15 kilometers down there looking for gold. You'd be shocked to know that in Zimbabwe, we're still at the open cast level. The veins of gold run deep in this country. If anyone knows what that means in terms of business, it means that we are actually in Texas during the oil rush. We're in Johannesburg during the gold rush. And I think the next biggest thing in the Southern Hemisphere will be Zimbabwe. It will be very, very important for Zimbabweans and South Africans to put our differences aside and focus at how we can build a SADC economy. If, for what it is worth, allow the educated community to begin to bridge between ourselves, marriages and education, businesses and technologies can thrive. I thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Bishop Maponga. We are going to the next level of our discussion with Bishop Joshua Maponga. Thank you very much again, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me, Hulu, at Pachiso Live. I am with the Hot Seat Empire, Rudozobo, my co-host. Bus Driver has just joined us also today on the co-host position. And please follow me so that we continue to give you information that is very valuable, to our society. Bishop Maponga is in the house, and we are having a conversation with him for things that are extremely important. Bishop Joshua Maponga, let me ask you 3 questions which only require a yes or a no answer. Have you ever met Rutendo Matinyarare, the leader of the Zimbabwe anti-sanctions movement?
Yes.
Have you ever met the president of Zimbabwe, President E.D. Mnangagwa?
Yes.
Have you ever met the billionaire, Kuda Tagire, Elder Kuda Tagire?
Yes.
All right. Bishop Maponga,